Ba, 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 ba.
Eddie, I'm not sure if you can hear me.
I can.
Okay, you are all set whenever you're ready. I will remove myself from the screen. So we are now actively live. Tom will just cut this part. So whenever you're ready, you're going to go. I'll remove myself from the screen and I will mute myself so you can just start yelling if you need me. I'll have the headset on the whole time for you.
All right, cool. That'll
All
work.
right, go
All
for
right.
it.
Tom, you're my guy. So I am a native of the city of charm and culture, as I love to call it, New Orleans. And when I say I'm a native of New Orleans, I mean I am a native of New Orleans. I grew up walking distance from the French Quarter, from the Superdome, some of the biggest landmarks in the city. So, yes, I grew up in the heart of the city, and that includes enjoying Mardi Gras. When I was a kid, those are some of the best memories that I had. I mean, going to a parade and standing there with my little arms up, watching the floats come by, watching the marching bands come by, especially my brother, who was in one of the marching bands. Might I add, the greatest high school marching band in the history of the universe, the St. Augustine Marching 100. Please bow your heads. No, I mean, I loved it. And the thing about being in Mardi Gras is that you have all of these lights, you have these sounds, you have the bees coming down at you. You can smell people on some of the parade routes barbecuing. Then there are the people who are just hanging out, having a good time, laughing, families with one another. Mardi Gras is a great memory. But then you have all of the types of people that you see at the parades. Now, you have the people who are tourists. They come in and they are just excited about everything that they see for very good reason. I mean, like I said, you have the sights, you have the sounds, and they are ready to jump in, no problem. They got it, and they have a great time. And then you have the people who are not exactly sure what to do. They might be a little paralyzed, maybe a little sensory overload, and so they kind of relax and they get it. They get they get it. And then you have the people who are just outright mortified. I mean, they get to Mardi Gras and they just see everything and they're good. They just think to themselves, too many people, too much happening. I'm going right back to Oklahoma. And then you have the ones who are the ones I like to focus on and who I'm going to focus on for this particular talk. Two types who I think are very interesting when it comes to Mardi Gras. You have the people who are all about their fun. That's it. As long as they have fun, it's all good. But then you have the people who want to make sure that everybody has fun. And they are the life of the party. But not only that, they look out for kids and they do all of the really cool stuff that makes Mardi Gras pretty memorable. All right, so I got to give you some background here. If you don't know anything about Mardi Gras is French for Fat Tuesday. So the actual day, Tuesday, is when we celebrate Mardi Gras. Now, the time leading up to Mardi Gras is what's known as the carnival season. Now, if you're a person of faith, this is a Catholic thing for the most part, right? And so what we have this time of the Lenten season when people will abstain from whatever they need to abstain from, whatever their vices are, maybe. And then you have the people who are going to fast as well, right? And leading up to that time is a time of revelry, feasting, just having a great time. And that's the carnival season. Mardi Gras is the big day, your big last day before you jump into the Lenten season, which is kicked off by Ash Wednesday. Now, you have probably noticed, if you've ever been to a carnival parade or a Mardi Gras parade, you've probably noticed that people wear masks a lot, especially on Mardi Gras Day. So, why do they do that? Well, here's the thing: There's one side of the story where it's about anonymity because you have certain people who belong to certain crews and they represent, shall we say, the upper crust of the society. And they mask because they, let's be frank, they have a lot of money. But then, but then here's the other reason. The other reason is the revelry. And if you think about it, if you see your pediatrician having a great time or maybe too great a time at Mardi Gras, it might concern you a little bit. So your pediatrician is probably going to wear a mask so that you don't necessarily recognize them, right? But you know what? That's the thing. You can wear this mask or you don't have to wear a mask. And you know what's very interesting to me? What's very interesting to me is that you have all of this good time that you are going to have. As a matter of fact, you know what? We're in a parade right now. Here, you have a bead. Okay, you have a bead too. All right, there we go. You have this great time that you are going to have at Mardi Gras. And think about fraternity and sorority life. There are people who, when they get into their fraternity or the sorority, it's not really that much different because they get a set of letters and they have a great time, which we should, right? Fraternity and sorority life is awesome. And they have a great time for themselves. And so they make that experience about themselves, or they have a great time with everyone else in mind, all of the other members. Leadership can be the same way. I remember I was doing some work with one leader, and this is someone who was very new to their position, a high ranking position in this organization. And one of the first things that they told me, like only a couple of weeks after they started, was we need to really start looking at my personal brand. And I said, well, before you do all of that, you might want to get an idea of where you are and the job that needs to be done. And I got a little concerned about this person. But then you have the leaders who come in, and the first thing they think is, okay, what does everybody around here need? What I think is the best leaders are the ones who do embrace the strength of community. And they do so without a mask. They do it with authenticity, they do it with transparency. I am a leadership nut. And I am such a leadership nut that I got really curious about it. And I dedicated an entire master's degree program to strategic leadership. And when I got into this program, I couldn't wait to learn something that was just a big aha for me. All right, this is how much I nerd out about this thing. Okay, I ran across all of these theories in leadership and I got into the theories. I got so into the theories that I held on to my textbook. And every now and then, I kid you not, I will still thumb through my textbook to read about some of these theories to kind of remind myself of the path that leadership has taken over the past century or so, as far as academic studies are concerned. And one of the newer theories, and when I say newer, I mean within the past half century, that I believe is appropriate for fraternity and sorority life, especially, is a theory called the leader member exchange theory. We call it LMX for short. Now, the leader member exchange theory says that the performance of a leader is actually contingent on the response and the feedback that they get from their followers. So, this theory hammers home the point that a leader doesn't do it by themselves. They need people in order to do the job. And I'm going to give you my definition of leadership in just a bit, or at least my idea of leadership. But the leader member exchange theory, it says that the performance of a leader is based on the quality of exchanges that they have with their followers. They can either have high quality exchanges or they can have low quality exchanges. A high quality exchange is one in which the interaction is based a lot on likability. In other words, you like this person who is the leader likes this person who is the follower. And so they exchange information a lot. They communicate in a pretty healthy way. And the way that they communicate helps boost the leader's performance, and it also helps boost the performance of the team, and then maybe even the entire organization. Or you can have a low quality exchange. And that low quality exchange is one where basically things are done out of obligation on both sides. In other words, I'm just here to do my job, nothing more, nothing less. There's not anything necessarily wrong with that, but you don't get as much mileage out of a low quality exchange. Now, when I think about leadership, I boil leadership down to a simple concept, and that is leadership is a people oriented process. Just like you can't enjoy Mardi Gras without all of these people around you, you can't really lead without leading people. You got to have people. You can't lead rocks. You can't lead computers. You can't lead data. You lead people. And it is a process. Just like you have people who might go to their first carnival parade or they experience Mardi Gras for the first time and they have a process where they figure out how to get used to what's going on or the processes for them to jump in and just figure it out as they go, which can be really fun, by the way. Those folks understand that they have to really understand what they got themselves into, but they also realize that they have to kind of go with the twists and the turns of the revelry. And leadership can be the same way. You get involved, you get your office, and you have these people that are surrounding you, and you realize one day these are people and they are going to change. And when they change, I'm going to have to figure out how to work with them. And that's where the process comes in, that process of figuring things out. And yes, you can do all of the preparation that you want sometimes, and you're just going to have to figure out how to adapt, how to work on the fly. And sometimes you really can be prepared enough to work with people. And I don't want to scare you. I don't want you to think that leadership is this really crazy thing that maybe if you're a chapter president, you should not have done. No, I don't want you to think that. As a matter of fact, I want you to get comfortable with the fact that you do have these people and these people do matter. And without them, you cannot do your job. But along with that, comes the process of dealing with them so that you can figure out how to get results from whatever it is that you're doing in your chapter, in your fraternity, in your sorority. Now, here's the thing. In order to pull off this process with these people, it's pretty important to understand that you got to know yourself. Seriously, you do. You got to know yourself. But you also have to be willing to do things the right way. And I'll talk about the right way in just a little bit because I know that term can be relative. But then at the same time, you have to believe in your fellow members and you have to find value in the work that they do as well as the work that you do. And those are the three things that we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on your self awareness. We're going to focus on what it means to do things the right way and also what it means to really capture the influence of your fellow members. So, let's get started with our parade. Okay. So we have a parade that's going to be coming on by, and we are standing there waiting for this wonderful parade. And I remember the anticipation I felt as a kid waiting for the parade to come. And you know something? Whenever you are getting ready for a carnival parade, you got to get yourself ready. When I was a kid, and this happens to just about every single kid in New Orleans, when you're getting ready for a carnival parade, your parents give you one assignment. You got one thing to do. You got one job, and that is get yourself ready before you go to the parade. I think you know what I mean here, right? All right, let me paint the picture. You see, when you go to a carnival parade, you're going to be out in the elements. And then in 2026, we're going to have a pretty cold Mardi Gras here in New Orleans. You're going to be out in the elements. You're going to be outside. And so, if you were that kid, and I was that kid who decided that he needed to get something to drink or something to eat, and your parents are saying, okay, you can get something to eat, you can get something to drink, but you have got to go to the bathroom before we go because we're going to be out there for hours. But you're a kid, right? And I was the kid who was ready to go, ready to go. Okay, okay, okay. I would have my favorite meal, whatever that is, most likely red beans and rice. I love red beans and rice. It is my favorite meal of all time. I kid you not. And then I would have whatever drink I would have. I would have my juice or whatever it is, right? And so my parents are telling me, okay, you better take care of things before you go. And I'm going, no, 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 we got to get to the parade. We got to get to the parade. And their parents are going, no, 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 you better go. And you, all right, you don't want, okay, all right. And so you get excited, you get out there to the parade, and it's hour number one, and you gotta go. And so you got to find a place to go. Because here's the thing: if you've never been to New Orleans during the carnival season, um, the restaurants, other businesses, especially hotels, they don't just let everybody in to use the restrooms because there are millions of people along these parade routes. And so you can only imagine how these businesses are going to get just overwhelmed with people wanting to go to the restroom. So there are porta potties out there. I mean, you got that, but you got to hope that that you find the right one. You know what I'm saying? Um, and it's such a situation. This is such a part of Mardi Gras that there's even a song about it. I kid you not. This is really a song that we have in New Orleans called "Ain't No Place to Pee" on Mardi Gras Day. I'm dead serious. Okay, this song it goes, "Ain't no place to pee on Mardi Gras Day. Ain't no place to pee on Mardi Gras Day," and it is the truth because there is no place. Now you can take your chances, which some people do. They take their chances and they go someplace where they are hidden, where they believe they're hidden out in public. And, you know, you might get away with it, or somebody with a badge is going to find you and you're going to have a bad night. And you don't want to do that either. My point is this: you have got to be aware of yourself. Self awareness, when it comes to leadership, is job one. As a matter of fact, there is this saying in leadership that self awareness is the first commandment of leadership. But you can't have a good time around other folks if you don't treat yourself well. And so, with that being said, with that being the first commandment, to lead others, you need to learn how to lead yourself. This helps with your personal growth and development. It helps with your decision making. Your decision making becomes really clear. Self awareness means that you understand yourself, what makes you tick, what keeps you up at night, what gets you out of bed in the morning, your likes and your dislikes. Because if you understand yourself, if you know how you work, then you can communicate that to others. And when you're able to communicate to others who you are, how you work, then you're able to work together really, really well. Now, our parade is continuing. I know I forgot to do something. I have to do something very important. I have to do my impression of a Mardi Gras float passing. All right, here we go. All right, ready? All right, here we go. Ta-da. So yeah, you have your parade that's going, right? And so you're out among the people. You are self-aware. You have taken care of business like you were supposed to. So it is all good. It is okay. And as you are out there having a good time, you know what? You want everybody to have a good time. I think one of my favorite memories of going to a carnival parade was when my wife and I went out just a couple of years ago, actually. And when we went out to this parade, we were having this conversation, I kid you not, on the way to the parade route. In New Orleans, we have this cake during the carnival season that we eat. Is called a king cake. The king cake is like a big cinnamon roll in a ring. It is done with a brioche bread most of the time. Absolutely delicious, sugary goodness. And the king cake, just so a little background, it came from Europe. It represents the three wise men, right? And the first day that you consume king cake is the Feast of the Epiphany, January 6th. And you have so many different types of king cakes down here in New Orleans and other parts of Louisiana and over our sister city in Mobile. And so with these king cakes, you can have this very delicious big old cinnamon roll with uh oh goodness, with a cream cheese filling, with a strawberry filling, or raspberry filling, and with this icing on top of it. And you have this purple, green, and gold sugary sprinkle just all around the king cake. As a matter of fact, I finished dusting off a king cake today. And it is just the most delicious thing. And you choose whatever king cake is the one for you, your favorite bakery, whatever it is. Now, there's this one bakery in New Orleans called Dong Fong. It's a Vietnamese bakery. And my wife and I were talking about how we wanted a Dong Fong king cake. And we're going, yeah, we got to get one. But there's this thing. It's like an urban legend that if you want one of those king cakes, you got to order this thing online. Then you got to you got to go to the bakery, and you have to stand in line for about 30 minutes to get this cake. This is how popular this cake has gotten. And so I'm telling her I really want to try one of these cakes because people have been talking about these things. So we're out at the parade route. We stop at a restaurant, we get something to eat, and we're walking with our takeout, and we're eating and we're laughing, and we meet friends, and everybody's having a good time. And then there's this lady sitting there with a big old box. Okay. And I'm in my hands right now. I kid you not. This is about how big this thing was. And she's sitting there, and there's this murmur around her, and everybody is just like, "Oh my goodness!" Oh my and everybody's mouths are full, and I'm going, "What is happening over there?" She had a dong fong cake. She had a dong fong king cake, and you know what? Bless her. She decided to share the thing. She decided to share it. This was one of the greatest nights of my life. I kid you not. And so we are sitting there in anticipation, just this cake, this legendary king cake, and it lived up to it. It lived up to it. And we're looking at the lady going, you are sharing your king cake with us. And she said to us, I got to get this right. I got to get the right dialect. Okay, the uptown New Orleans dialect. She goes, "Oh, don't worry about it, darling. Just have a piece. It's the right thing to do." And that's the part to me that was so cool, that she just wanted the people around her to have a good time too. And she said it was the right thing to do. She didn't have to do it. She was being a good neighbor, a great neighbor. And in leadership, it's important to understand what it means to do right by other people, regardless of how much or how little you know about them, to be ethical. Your fellow members depend on you to make decisions that are in the best interest of the chapter, of the fraternity, or the sorority. They depend on you to do what's right when you take on a leadership role. Now, what does right mean? I know that for a lot of people, right can be relative. I was actually a freshman in college when I took this course called The Philosophy of Right and Wrong. And I'll never forget my professor, Dr. Devasa Hayam. And he would stand in class, and he would say, "Okay, we are talking about this issue right now. Mr. Francis, illuminate us." And so what the right thing is in the context of this conversation is doing what is best for the well being of the people around you, living up to your fraternity or sorority's mission, ideals, and values, honoring the mission and the work of your campus. I know you didn't see that one coming too, because a lot of people, when we talk about fraternity and sorority life, sometimes the very last group of people that we think about is the campus that we actually sit on. But the campus that we sit on is extraordinarily important because they do not have to have your chapter on that campus. So, yeah, think about living up to the mission and the work that your college or your university is doing. Also, being an example of personal leadership, that personal growth and development thing that I brought up a little earlier. Personal leadership is an extension of that personal growth and development. Personal leadership is when you really lean into ethical leadership because it's not just growing and developing for yourself, it's growing and developing in a way that you positively influence the people around you. There was this really great quote that I saw by a former New Orleans Saints player by the name of Danny Abramowitz. And he was actually doing an article, or he was being interviewed for an article, and it was about spirituality. And so, if you would just bear with me with the reference and bear with me, this is going someplace. But one of the things that they asked him is, how do you be a good example to people? And he said, and I'm going to get this in the context of our conversation, but he says sometimes the only gospel people are going to see is you. Think about that in fraternity and sorority life. And let's change a word. Sometimes the only example that people will see is you. And so when you have those letters on and you're out and about on campus and you're working not only with your fellow members, but you're also working with other student leaders on campus, or when you're working with your administrators on campus, or when you're working in the community that surrounds your campus. Yes, there might be 50 of you doing something, but every single one of you will be doing something to represent the other 49 people. And sometimes the only example of what your fraternity or sorority stands for is you. And that's when you can lean into doing the right thing, to being the ethical leader who's going to make a true difference, not just in your chapter, but outside of your chapter. So our parade continues. You're having a good time. You're self aware. And now you have made sure that other people around you are having a good time. You know what? You're one of those really cool people at the parade who, whenever one of the beads drops down, you pick it up and you hand it to the kid. You don't need that thing. Give it to the kid, right? You catch a stuffed animal, you give it to another kid. You're one of those people. Or you see someone who has a kid and they're struggling to get someplace and the kid can't see the parade and you move aside and you move the kid up. And maybe even if you're one of those people, if the parents are cool with it, you put the kid on your shoulder. I've seen people do that as well because you want everybody at the parade to have a great time. And now what you're doing is you're investing in everybody else at the parade, just like you would invest in your fellow members. To me, the MVPs of the Mardi Gras were just the ones who I talked about. But the thing about them is that you'll never know their names. I mean, these are people who you see once, maybe in your lifetime, and you will never see them again. They might be from another city, but this guy, you're this kid and this guy handed you a bead that you really, really wanted. Or you couldn't see, and this lady who you will never see again, she let you move up to the front so you could see the floats and the bands and all of that good stuff. And that's when my night was made. Whenever I couldn't get anything, but somebody was kind enough to give me that set of beads, or they helped me see what was going on. They helped me see the band. I could see my brother marching by with the marching band. And they're not the kings, they're not on the float or anything like that, but they are fellow spectators. but they are important pieces of Mardi Gras, of the carnival season. And the way that they participate leaves an impression on so many people. In leadership, the real MVPs are the followers. I know you thought that you're the one with the title and you're the one who has all this decision-making authority and all that good stuff. And you are very important. But here's the thing. Remember that part that I said about you can't get anything done without your people? You can't get anything done without the members. This is what we call followership, by the way. When all of those people who are just as engaged in a parade, they get engaged, the members, with making sure that the chapter runs well and they have your back as an officer in the chapter. That's followership. There's a great book that I recommend, and it is called The Power of Followership by a management professor by the name of Robert Kelly. And there's a point that he makes in his book, a big point. And the big point is there are more followers than there are leaders. That's why followers have so much power. That's why. All those people along the parade route who are watching these parades, what if not one of them showed up for a parade? And oh, by the way, I have seen parades where there are barely any spectators. It's a sad sight. It is. It's tragic. So, guess what? These floats look great. The bands sound good. The dancing teams look great, but they need people to watch them. And just like they need people to watch them, you, as a leader in your chapter, you need your members. So, what does it look like for members to practice followership? Well, let's get one thing clear. Followership is following, but following isn't always followership. In other words, followership is following because you are following. But you see, following isn't always followership because you could follow blindly. And if you follow blindly, that is not followership. So you have to get an idea of what kinds of people you have in your chapter. What makes them the type of follower that they are? And Robert Kelly, when he was researching followership, he identified that there are actually 5 types of followers in just about any group that you're going to be a part of. And you can pretty much base a lot of the personalities that you see on these 5 types of followers. And in this model, what he looked at was how involved someone would be and how much critical thinking someone would display. Now, the first type of follower, and probably the most important type of follower, is what Kelly calls the exemplary follower. This is someone who is highly involved and they display high critical thinking. The exemplary follower communicates with the leaders, works well with the leaders, works well with everybody else, and they put their talents to work. And so you think about the parade, these are the people watching a parade who they're the givers. They're the ones who are always involved. They're talking to people around them. And again, they want to make sure that everybody else is having a good time too, because this is carnival season. Now, a second type of follower who is actually opposite the exemplary follower is the passive follower. The passive follower barely gets involved and doesn't really display a whole lot of critical thinking. If you think about a chapter meeting, then this is probably someone who sits in the back and they just sit back there. They don't really do much of anything. They don't engage with the leaders much, and they do just enough. They do just enough to get by as a chapter member. If you think about this person in a carnival season or a carnival parade crowd, this is someone who's probably just standing there, just standing, just watching it go by. Hey. And then you have the conformist. The third type of follower, the conformist, is someone who is highly involved, but they don't do a whole lot of critical thinking. And the conformist is someone who basically goes with the flow. Whatever the leaders want, they're fine. They'll do it. No big deal. This type of person, everything is just amazing to them, right? They're the parade. Everything is amazing. They're good. No problem. And then you have a fourth type of follower, and that would be the alienated follower. Now, while I think the exemplary follower is probably the most important type of follower, I think the alienated follower is the most interesting type of follower, because this is the type of follower who is barely involved, but they do display high critical thinking. Here's the thing. There's a story here with the alienated follower. This is probably somebody who at some point was actually an exemplary follower. But what happened was that they got turned off by something. Who knows what it was? It was some decision, it was something, and they probably felt a bit betrayed. And so they are a bit critical of just about everything that's going on. This in your chapter meeting might be the peanut gallery. This might be the person sitting in the back and they have a comment for everything that's going on. I mean, you think everything is going well until they pipe up back there. It's like, oh, we thought that was a good idea, and we didn't we? Right? And at the parade, this is someone who's just critical of everything happening at the parade. Nothing at the parade is right for them. I mean, you would rather that they were probably more of a passive follower, or maybe even a conformist, because these jokers, everything they see at the parade, look at that light falling off the side of the float. And it's like, there's no light falling up. No, look at it. Just look at it really closely. And you're looking really closely. And yeah, maybe it's a little crooked or something, but it's fine. It's not gonna fall or anything. But the alienated follower just always finds something wrong with something, but they are pretty vocal about it. And then the type of follower, who is the fifth type here, would be the pragmatic follower. The pragmatic follower is somewhere in the middle of all of this. I mean, they know the system, they know how things work, and they do what's required. But the thing is, it depends on the situation. So they just kind of wait things out, right? And so at the Mardi Gras parade or at the carnival parade, I mean, this is the person who is watching the carnival parade, and yeah, I mean, everything is everything. It's really no big deal, but nothing really impresses them. But they are involved, but just nothing really impresses them, and they just know all the tricks. Everything is about the trick. Oh, here's a trick for this. Here's a trick for that. They know the lay of the land, but they're not necessarily committed to anything. So what do you do? See, the goal, if you really want to be a healthy contributor to what's happening in your chapter, the goal is to be that exemplary follower. And I got to tell you, it does take a lot of work. So, what do you do to be the exemplary follower? All right, well, here's what we do. Let's say you're passive. If you're passive, the way that you convert from passive to exemplary is to learn what the actual followership skills are and to make an effort, a concerted effort, to communicate with your leaders. But you have to figure out what the exemplary follower is doing. You got to learn from them. You got to listen to them more than anything else. What about a conformist? How do you transform from a conformist into an exemplary follower? The way you do it is you develop a greater sense of confidence, trust your own opinions. And when you trust your opinions, don't be afraid to speak up. It's not going to be the end of the world if you actually tell the leader that you disagree with something. Now, I will say that it does depend also on the kind of language you use. There's a big difference between "I don't like that" and "here's what I think would be a great idea." Those are two very different approaches when it comes to being an exemplary follower. And I think a lot of times what the conformists might be thinking is that if they do say that they don't like something, then that's going to be it. That relationship is going to be severed. It may, but it may not. But it all depends on how much confidence you can build and using the right language when it comes to working with your leaders. Now, the alienated follower, yeah, that's a bit of a journey. But you know what? It can be done. For the alienated follower to transform into an exemplary follower, you got to get past your personal feelings. I mean, let's just put it all on the table. I mean, I know we might not necessarily want to hear that, but yeah, you got to get past your personal feelings. Whatever got to you, you have to figure out how to deal with it. And you also have to focus on the positive because, after all, you're sitting here with your chapter members, you have your leader there, things, you're together. Something could be going right. What is going right? Focus on that. And then, not only that, as you focus on what's happening, the job at hand, focus on what needs to be done, not necessarily who's doing it. So focus on that job, not necessarily the personalities. And I would also say focus on what you want the end game to be here. Because if you want the end game for everyone for everyone to thrive, then figure out how you can contribute to thriving. And then for the pragmatist to transform into an exemplary follower, slow down on playing politics because that might be your Achilles heel. Slow down on it. I mean, yeah, I know you know the systems. I know you know how everything goes, and I know you can almost anticipate everything that everybody is going to do. So you figure out how to work the system every single time, but slow down. Because the one thing that a pragmatist does not necessarily see is that people might not necessarily trust them because they come across as playing politics. So, what you can do to transform to an exemplary leader is take all of that knowledge that you use for yourself and your own survival and help other people understand the system and help them understand why understanding the system is so important. The big point is here, if you can really understand what your follower type is, then you can be an effective and an ethical leader because you know what you would like to see improve, or you know what you love about what your leaders do. And whatever points you disagree with, or whatever points keep you disengaged, then you can develop that skill set for yourself and you can develop it for the good of the chapter. And you can say to yourself, well, if I were the leader, what would I do differently? Understanding that about yourself can make you very helpful. And oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you something. This is really important. How silly of me. You don't need a title to lead. You can be a committee member and you can still be one of the most influential people in the chapter. You can graduate from college never having served on the executive board, but you can still be one of the most influential people in your chapter. And, you know, the more fulfilling you make your fraternity or sorority experience for your fellow members, the more you can get out of it yourself as well. But the thing is that if you make this about you and only you, you may feel as if you've accomplished something. You may feel good about that end game for yourself. But the thing is that the fraternity or sorority experience, it won't deliver what you think it should have delivered to you. And that's why it's important to get beyond yourself and to take a look at what you can do to be a great chapter member who is a leader without the title. Operating with your community in mind is not just a feel good thing, it is actually about getting results. In fact, I got to give you some bad news with all of the things that I've talked about. This is actually a difficult journey. Leadership is hard. It is hard. And sometimes leadership, even if you don't have a title, if you're the one who decides that you haven't spoken up before, but you're going to start speaking up, it can be disappointing. because sometimes you don't get the results that you want to get. But the thing is that if you put your best foot forward, you can figure out how to deal with that frustration of when things don't necessarily go the way that you want them to go. And here's where the reward is. The reward is that even with the frustration, you can still get the results. You can raise lots of money for the fundraisers. You can get the campus recognition that you feel that your chapter deserves. And then you can tell great stories of your accomplishments with your chapter when you interview for that first big job, or if you're not necessarily looking to get into the workforce, that story, that magical story that's going to get investors to invest in that business that you're building. It can happen. It really can happen. So listen, Mardi Gras, it's a time of revelry. It's fun. I can't wait for Mardi Gras 2026, just like a whole lot of other people in the New Orleans area. With that time of revelry, you know what time it is. Okay. It is time to blow off steam. It is time to have a ton of fun. I am right there with you. But if you do it for yourself and only for yourself, you'll probably have a good time. You'll probably have a great time. I mean, I hope you find the right porta potty and all that other good stuff. But if you have a great time with your community in mind, all of the people around you who are at the parade having a great time as well, and you want to be the one who helps everybody around you have a great time, then you will have more than a great time. You're going to have memories. You're going to be able to walk away talking about how it was one of the greatest things you had ever experienced. And you know what? Everyone around you will cherish that memory as well for a lifetime. All right. Laissez le bon temps rouler. Have a good time. Let the good times roll. Thank you very much.
Awesome. I was like, is he gonna throw it again? I don't know what the energy was. That was awesome.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for my private viewing. I'm gonna click now to end the stream so Tom doesn't hear us yapping. All right, end stream.